All right. Meeting is in progress. We'll call this meeting of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program Policy Board meeting to order for August 16th, 2024. Roll call, Ms. Burke.
District Director Boatwright. Here. Councilmember Cotton. Councilmember Floyd.
Here.
Governing Board Member Watkins.
Here.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Here.
Councilmember Justice.
Here.
Ms. Weaver for Commissioner Mariano.
Here.
Mr. McGill.
Here.
Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Any changes to the agenda?
At your places, we just have an updated agenda item 7, affirming the elections of the Management Policy Board last week.
All right, very good. Item number 2, minutes from the May 24th Policy Board meeting. Are there edits, amendments, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, item number 3, we will open the public hearing on the proposed FY 2025 program-wide budget. We'll open the public hearing with staff presentation. Mr. Sherwood.
Yeah, as we do every August, we present the initial budget for the upcoming fiscal year, which would begin October 1st, 2024 and go through September 30th, 2025. The notice of the budget hearing was duly advertised in the Tampa Bay Times on Wednesday, August 7th and Sunday, August 11th. And just to bring the board up to speed and the public up to speed on total expenditures that we're expecting for next year. As advertised in the proposed budget, we're looking at about 4.2 million in anticipated expenditures, and that would encompass about 1.2 million in action plan implementation, basically encompassing our operating cost as a program, which is 8 full-time staff, one part-time staff, as well as our overall operations of rent, utilities, insurance, and what have you. In addition, we're anticipating about 2.6, close to 2.7 million in contracted scientific restoration and outreach projects for next year. And a lot of these projects are additional federal funding that are coming into the program that we're anticipating expenditures for in fiscal year 2025. As we do, and as required by our EPA cooperative agreement grants, there's a 50-50 match requirement for each of our work plan years. And next year, we're anticipating about 300,000 in-kind that needs to be collected. That in-kind project is going to be from the city of Clearwater, as well as past projects that we haven't collected in-kind for from prior work plan years. So we're anticipating about 300,000 in total in-kind projects, again, bringing us to total project expenditures of 4.2 million. The sources of revenue to cover those anticipated expenditures, as I mentioned, are largely from federal resources. We have about 1.86 million anticipated from federal resources, and this is an increase over prior years of about 800,000 from additional bill funding, as well as anticipated restore grant to support projects in fiscal year 2025. Estimating about 110,000 from specialty license plate revenues. And this is basically our 5-year average that I use as a ballpark figure of anticipated revenues from the sales of our specialty license plate. Then some additional grants and other contracts that come into the program and that staff has secured to the tune of about 1.37 million. In total, as I mentioned, we're anticipating about 4.2 million in expenditures. And basically prior revenues that have been collected will supplement some of the revenues to fully meet that expenditure amount. And our agency balance to meet that total would be about 560,000. So that concludes my presentation of the fiscal year 2025 budget. I'd be happy to entertain any questions on our anticipated revenues and expenditures for next year.
Questions? Do we have any citizens input? All right. Seeing none, at this point, we'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to item number 4, general citizens comments. Seeing none. Item number 5, action item, the initial FY 2025 program-wide budget. Anything else, Mr. Sherwood?
Yeah, this is just a little bit more detail in terms of the overall program-wide budget for fiscal year 2025. On page 10, we kind of detail each of the line item expenditures anticipated over the next year. The only thing to mention is this is about a 20% increase of what we're anticipating for this current fiscal year. Again, with additional federal revenues coming into the program through the Build and Restore program. The one thing I did want to mention is under direct personnel services, I do have an increase factored in there to encompass both about a 3% health insurance increase as well as a cost of living adjustment for staff up to 5%. And as I do each year, that cost of living adjustment is based on performance and a performance evaluation that occurs between now and the end of our fiscal year in September. But other than that, tried to trim expenses as much as we could in most cases along each of those expenditure line items. And then just recognizing that we're anticipating a little bit more in terms of contract and consultant services this next fiscal year with those additional federal funds coming into the program. But other than that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions if there's any particular questions about any line items. Yep.
Commissioner.
Just about the Restore Act money. Sort of like $8.5 million.
Yep.
And how close are you now to get the final approval?
So I sent back a partially executed agreement. I'm still waiting for it fully executed back from the department. But we factored in based on how we scheduled the timeline of that project, about I think 200,000 of that grant fund being spent in fiscal year 2025. So only a little bit portion of that, and that's about $1.5 million towards the phase 1 planning stages.
And all that money is not matching, it's just straight money.
Straight coming into the program.
So having said that, and knowing that we've taken this broad approach and now we're going to work on the whole coast, I'd like to see us take the next step to start implementing for up along the coast for water quality.
Yeah, our plan with those funds is to come up with a priority list of projects, primarily targeting Old Tampa Bay, but at the second phase, when we get the additional $8 million, at that point, if there are other projects throughout the watershed and the project area that we submitted to the grant, that would be open for actual implementation dollars at that point. And that would be sort of what we forward on to DEP and the Restore Council for their approval to release that second phase of money.
I've got another idea too for a project we can go submit. Should we wait for another item to go do that? Could do that? Not for this budget, just for a
Are
future.
you talking like a grant project?
Another grant project for Part 2 money.
Yeah, just let us know and we can look into it.
And I don't want to do this item, but before we leave here, I'd like to bring it out.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions on the budget? All right, if not, is there a motion to adopt the 2025 program-wide budget?
So moved.
We have motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Show it passes unanimously. All budgets would just go that smoothly. Item number 6, quarterly financial, Mr. Sherwood.
So this is our activity through the third quarter of the current fiscal year, which ended June 30th. This is basically showing our activity relative to the approved mid-year budget amendment that passed back at the May meeting. In total, we're at about 65% in total revenues that we anticipated for this current fiscal year, and about 54% in total expenditures. And a lot of that is largely due to delays in projects that would roll into the next fiscal year. And it's kind of already encompassed in what we just passed in terms of anticipated work. But other than that, where we like to look on the last column is if we're at about 75% or lower, and primarily in our expenditures, and we're pretty much at that. We'd like to see us be at least 75% or more in terms of our project expenditures, meaning that we're getting money out the door. But like I said, they're due to project delays. Some of those projects are going to carry forward into the next fiscal year. Overall, be happy to entertain any questions. We'll bring back a final budget based on our realized revenues and expenditures at the November meeting, and that will be the basis for the audit moving into the next fiscal year. Questions?
Questions or comments on the quarterly? No, is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Item number 7, management board chair and vice chair.
As I mentioned, there's an updated agenda item 7 at your places, and this is just acknowledging the elections that occurred at the management board meeting last Friday, August 9th. Basically, Ms. Kelly Hammer Levy, who is the existing management board chair, was reelected as chair, as well as Dr. Leanne Flewelling, who is elected as vice chair and remains as vice chair. So according to our bylaws, the policy board just has to approve those elections and formalize it here today.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 8, reasonable assurance. Mr. Sherwood.
So this is a project that we conduct on 5-year time periods, and we usually ask for contractual support. This is basically our demonstration to the Florida DEP as well as EPA that we are continuing to meet water quality goals supportive of seagrass recovery in Tampa Bay. We developed a reasonable assurance document on a 5-year time period, and the next one will be due at the end of 2027, and it would encompass basically water quality and loading conditions of the 2022 to 2026 period. We actually advertised this over the last period between March 4th and May 24th. We got 3 proposals in to basically do 5 tasks as listed within the description of this agenda item. That's namely to estimate annual loading conditions from all the estimate sources in the watershed, looking at and reporting on water quality conditions, updating projects that our partners are doing in response to trying to reduce nitrogen loads throughout the bay, assessing how they've done relative to allocations that have been adopted through state final orders as it relates to nitrogen limits for each of their permits. And then, compiling all that documentation and submitting it ultimately to DEP and EPA for their formal approval. We had 5 review panel members, all participants of the Nitrogen Management Consortium, and our staff as part of the review committee. The 3 proposals received uniformly. The review committee felt that one was the top ranked across all 5 members. And that is going to be my recommendation to move forward with an agreement with Environmental Science Associates as the top ranked respondent for their proposed amount of $240,634. One thing I did want to mention that the review committee mentioned that because of some of the strides we've made as internally as staff, some of the cost estimates that were provided in the proposal to estimate loads, the task one, the review committee and staff felt like we could potentially negotiate more cost and effort in actually developing the document rather than the loading estimates. So that would be part of the negotiations that we'd enter into if the policy board agreed. But other than that, as I mentioned, my recommendation would be moving forward with Environmental Science Associates. And as we typically do for these RFPs, there's a second item just to authorize me as executive director to amend the scope and budget of the agreement up to $25,000. That's my discretion under state procurement law if additional funds come into the program. But we do that for every standard RFP approval. And I'll stop there and answer any questions you might have on that RFP.
Yes, sir.
Got a thought. So this is what I was going to get to. About 19 years ago, I found out that there was like 60 to 7 million gallons a day being pumped into the bay from advanced wastewater treatment plant now, the Howard Carn plant. And I just wonder how the effective it is over time. I know it's gotten better since they've upgraded everything, which is great. But I'm wondering, would it be even better if you could actually eliminate that? And if you eliminated that, what would the nitrogen load drop down to? And would that help the bay?
Yeah, I think all of our remaining direct discharges to Tampa Bay, City Tampa, City Clearwater, and a couple other in the old Tampa Bay Basin, they now have to prescribe to, I think it's Senate Bill 64, correct? Where they have to identify beneficial reuse for those direct discharges by 2032. So we support and recognize that any elimination of that discharge would be a nitrogen load reduction benefit to the bay, and are supportive of those actions. I know each of the entities are kind of working through that of what that beneficial reuse of that water might be, but we're here to support that, and we'll actually probably bring that back in November as sort of our legislative priorities to work with both the local, state, and federal government to ensure that those entities have the resources to look at different options for the beneficial reuse of some of that discharge water.
So we did a project up in Pasco where we took our reclaimed water areas, moved it north of 52 instead of just in the Wesley Chapel area. And we put it out there and it's hydrated the whole area, so much so that neighborhoods are complaining about the water levels are too high. Now that would lead to higher flows naturally occurring with Mother Nature doing the work instead of us doing more. And I'm wondering if we looked around and made this a part 2 project, maybe incorporated to this study of work on these lows. If we found areas around where the water levels are, it could be pumped up even more. Maybe it's a better way to go to kind of take that water instead of just doing a direct discharge. Then you could just let more water flow naturally into the bay as opposed to going the other way.
Yeah, there's certainly been a number of different options proposed for more beneficial reuse of that water, rehydrating wetlands, groundwater injection to rehydrate aquifers. It's really going to be a matter of each of the entities and working with the water management district to identify what the best option is for them. Cost is usually a factor as well. Pumping that water long distances can be prohibitive. But we've been talking about beneficial reuse of some of those direct discharges for well over several decades. It's just a matter of now there's the state legislation kind of forcing the issue a little bit more.
And I think it's a huge opportunity, especially with that pot of money that's out there. They look for big projects to go. And I think with the estuary leading the way forward to go try to look at all this load that's going in there, what's the best way to take it out? In Pasco County, we've been probably the leader in reclaimed water. And we've got so many lines out there with it that I was at an event last night where the people are saying, hey, we want to get more reclaimed water, but they're shutting us down because you don't have enough of it yet, but you're still putting more lines out there. We're still planning that we will still want to have it available. But if you took a look at all that water going in that's being dumped and you could purify it, and whether you go long distance, like up to Pasco, because if you went up to Crossbar, Albar, we're hydrating up there now, we could still go another 20, 30 miles up there and even hydrate more, where Tampa Bay Water gets a lot of their water. That may not be the best way, but if you put a pipeline up that even went to smaller segments, started up huge and then shrunk to where you could put dispersions of it. I'd say through the county, you could get, our county, we could get rid of all of it, hydrate everything around it, and then hopefully it would free up even more water to naturally flow and let Mother Nature do its work.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Manatee County is upgrading some of their plants now to do exactly what you're speaking about. So again, how each entity approaches that question. We do think it's a net benefit of removing that discharge from the bay proper because it represents a significant amount of nutrients going into the bay. And there are higher and better uses of that water.
So do you think that maybe we could put a grant to the Part 2 funds and then try to get that where we can actually study it comprehensively to find out, let's go look at all this whole thing. It'd be probably a big grant money, but maybe ESA can guide you to what they think would be a good way to go about it to make the approach.
If our partners want us to be involved in that aspect, yeah.
That's the partners.
We just finished a 6 pilot study for our wastewater. It's worked well for water, but it did not work well with wastewater. It wasn't cost effective. The return wasn't there.
And that's the additional treatment that is like it's an upgrade of their treatment process at the Tiffin plant.
Yeah, we
Or
just got a report on that probably 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So if that's not working, it's too expensive to go, then it's an opportunity for an alternative to try something else that could work better.
Oh, no, I mean, we're certainly going to have to, but that was one of the things that we had wanted to try, and they came back and said it didn't pull enough out, didn't pull enough nutrients.
Yeah, and I tell you, when you upgraded the plant years ago, it was fantastic and just really reduced the load going in there. But again, just listening to my people up there that we need more, we got the plants going on the ground and how this one hydration product has worked. We're talking about with Tempe Water drilling more wells over in Eastern Hillsborough County. And instead of doing all that, maybe it's better just let Mother Nature do the rest of the treatment, increase those flows. And if you put enough water around it, like really our ponds are actually almost higher on 52 than it is the road. So it's working, but if it worked there, it could work elsewhere too.
Councilmember Hurtak, can you talk a little bit about some of the public engagement that you faced around these decisions?
Oh, yeah, no, the city of Tampa, I don't think we've ever had as much public engagement as with this issue. People do not want reclaimed water to go back into, they definitely, it was probably the biggest issue in the last campaign. So focusing on what we can do with it. So that's why we've been trying these other studies, and they're going to keep working on it. But absolutely, the one thing that is seems to be successful is the possible expansion of our what we call our Purple Pipes program for reclaimed water for yard usage. But that is also, that's probably the most expensive thing, and we don't have the land that you do to kind of let nature take its course.
Right. And we've got it, I mean, literally, we put so many purple pipes in that you can't retrofit. It is too expensive.
Yeah.
We know that we've been down that road once and we won't go down there again. But all our new developments getting it, we want to have it, even though we can't even supply it yet, just in case. But rather than, like I said, rather than having the issue where you have with it, I've got opportunities where I can get rid of it. And then, we supply a lot of the water for the region anyway, because it flows this way, down to the south. The more I hydrate everything we get, the more water flow is going to go everywhere else.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the pot 2 money, looking at all these flows, we can take some just even with our regular reclaimed pipes. So I don't need to take it all the way up to Crossbar, but I can take it bits and pieces. And if my people aren't using regular well water, they're going to use reclaimed water instead. Then guess what? That water stays in the aquifer, can flow down, and again, Mother Nature can do the work instead of us.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, as we continue to grow as a region, some of those utilities are approaching the allocations, basically the limits of nitrogen discharge that they're allowed to do into the bay proper. So we're gonna have to look at options. It might not be all of the water, but they're gonna have to start looking at a portion of that water, using it more beneficially than how it's being discharged now.
And so back to affordability, if you can get this money that's sitting out there, that's designed to make the bay cleaner, make the Gulf cleaner, there's an opportunity where you can say, let's go do this project. And now it's funded. You don't have to spend any money, and everything gets done. And the sooner it gets done, as Charlie knows, that's what we're trying to do. Clean the Gulf up as quick as we can. The longer it takes, then it's really not as much a benefit.
Yeah, those sorts of projects, as we receive federal funds and are able to direct the little amount of funding that we have towards those projects, wastewater infrastructure improvements, we're happy to do so. And if partners want us to be involved with grant applications to those larger funding sources to upgrade their facilities, be happy to participate with them as well in those grant applications.
Well, I mean, I'd like to have you talk to ESA. I think they're a great company. They're very familiar with the consortium from the get-go.
Yeah.
I think we should engage at least a conversation with them and then bring something back to us.
Well, it's certainly going to be part of the conversations, as I mentioned, of the Nitrogen Management Consortium over the next 5 years, especially as we look at the relative loadings of each of the entities relative to those allocation limits. And if we're approaching those sort of hard limits, we're going to have to look at options universally throughout the region on what to do with some of those sources of nutrients.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Further questions, comments? Or is a motion to accept the agenda item authorizing the negotiation as well as the executive director authority?
Second.
The motion second, further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Item number 9, amended and restated Florida Estuaries Alliance MOU.
Yeah, so I'm bringing this to the board's attention. Back in 2016, the 4 Florida NEP directors actually signed a memorandum of understanding formalizing the Florida Estuaries Alliance, basically a document formalizing our partnership of identifying priorities that we bring both to our state and federal elected officials on collective actions that would work within our program areas, but also support ongoing coastal and estuarine restoration throughout the state of Florida. There are a number of different entities who are working on similar issues along the coast that we also want to involve in sort of those discussions and identifying priorities and educating our legislators on. So that is basically included within that original MOU. That original MOU actually had a 5-year sunset period and it actually lapsed in 2021. We recently met as the 4 Florida NEPs back in June, and we thought it was a good idea to reinstate that original MOU towards activities over the next 5+ years. So what I'm bringing to you today is a basically amended and restated draft that has been reviewed by our legal counsel, basically identifying some additional organizations throughout the state that we'd like to collaborate on as a Florida Estuary Alliance, but really solidifying again the partnership between the 4 Florida NEPs on the onset with this amended and restated document. The other additions and edits to that MOU is basically including a sundown review period provision, basically so that it wouldn't sunset in the future. We look at every 5 years of whether or not any updates to the document need to be made amongst the signatories, and then go from there on whether or not to formally do an update. Otherwise, it would just continue as is. The other addition would be a joinder clause was included so that in the future of any of those collaborators that were identified in the document, if they wanted to formally sign on to the MOU, they could, and we wouldn't have to come back to the board for formal approval. So we think this is a good idea, again, as speaking as one voice on a lot of the coastal and estuarine issues that are common amongst our 4 Florida NEPs to sign on to it again. And I'm looking for formal approval to do that from the policy board. We have to entertain any questions, but kind of highlighted is for the 3 areas that have changed with this amended and restated document.
Councilmember?
Yeah, how did it lapsing affect, our work trying to bring resources to the estuary programs, and just how would this make it better?
So I think this is just formalizing sort of that agreement. We still continue to meet as the NEPs within the state. Other NEPs have been a little bit more successful in procuring state funding, usually largely around some of the Everglades restoration issues that affect some of their estuaries. This just, again, gives us a unified voice and equal weight that we also need, support throughout local, state, and federal resources to address a lot of the issues that we're facing here in Tampa Bay as well. So again, it didn't necessarily affect how we operated amongst the NEPs, but it does formalize, us as a Florida Estuaries Alliance. And when we provide education to our state and federal elected officials, we would be speaking as a Florida Estuaries Alliance.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like you're hoping that it means resources get distributed a little more equally.
That's my hope as the Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
In the past, we've been very limited on state resources. It's all been federal and local. And the state resources have been targeted depending on if a state senator had a particular issue in his area. And so, I mean, for me, ideally, we would get to a point where the legislature would just go, $1 million to be split among the programs or whatever the funding amount. But to get in the door of some funding level, and then just every year they keep adding to it. For me, that's what the goal is. And to have that one voice to talk to as far as when issues come up, but also to educate.
That makes sense. All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
The strategy.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda items?
So moved.
We have a motion second, further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Shows it passed unanimously. All right, item number 10, staff reports. Mr. Sherwood.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to the policy board's attention that due to the resignation of Mike Owen from the Hillsborough County Commission in June, that actually leaves a vacancy for vice chair for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program Policy Board. What I'm proposing is that we hold elections at the November meeting for that vice chair position. So anyone interested in doing that, please let me know. We could go from there. But again, that just leaves a vacancy for one of the positions that we need to fill according to our bylaws. As far as another update that I wanted to bring to the board's attention, our longtime legal services and counsel, Don Kahn, is actually going to be retiring at the end of November. Don was kind of foreshadowing this event from coming, so it's not a surprise to us, but
It was pretty much once Mariano came on board, right?
So he's been excellent legal counsel for the program. He plans to attend the November meeting, but he'll be formally retiring at the end of November. My plan, based on his recommendation, is to speak to some legal counsel that is out there and has worked with both the city of Tampa as well as our program in the past. Jan McLean, I've already had some initial conversations in terms of potentially developing a contract, but I really leave it up to the policy board. If there are other firms or other legal counsel that you suggest, I have this quarter to kind of entertain quotes and negotiate contracts with folks over this period. So again, my plan would be to bring back a proposed contract for new legal services to start December 1st. So we'd have a seamless transition between when Don retires on November 30th to our new legal representation on December 1st. But I'll open up the floor now. If the policy board felt that we need to go out for request for proposal, or if there are other entities that you would want me to speak to, I'd be happy to do that over the next quarter.
Yes, sir.
He's got amazing resiliency, Don Con.
Yeah.
8 years for
Mr. Chair,
That's all I worked together, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Watkins?
Ms. Watkins?
yes, good morning. I think in the interest of transparency, not any particular firm, but I think the opening at least needs to be more widely publicly noticed. I don't consider this deep within an agenda to meet any standard of, public notice. If some legal firm wanted to apply, they have to read every little agenda of everything. I would have a strong preference for noticing the opening. Whether, I'd probably, yes, a request for proposal. I don't think we should just go to one person, even if that one person, it does end up being the most qualified. I don't think an outgoing legal counsel should select the next legal counsel as one thing, but the main thing is, I think this is a public board, and those kind of services should be publicly noticed with invitations to bid.
Yeah, I think I'd be happy to advertise it on our website. Notice that this is a vacancy and requesting quotes. Our legal services have averaged about $10,000 per year. So
Yeah, I know they're low, but I just think it's about the transparency of the process.
We will take it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Regional Planning Council has had Don for many, many years. And whatever, I think whoever they pick, it probably makes sense to even look at mirroring, hiring the same firm. Keep it simple, keep it contained. Same organization, basically, so.
Not the same at all.
As far as structure goes, come on.
Sorry, I'm having too much fun with you this morning. Well, let me ask our legal counsel what our requirements are for putting out to bid for this type of service.
Well, certainly, if you decide that you want to go through that process, you can. It's perfectly permissible. But I do call to your attention that there is an exemption for legal services in the procurement law that does allow the hiring of legal counsel without going through the procurement process. Now, that's not to say that you can't still do that. And
Sure.
if the board is more comfortable doing that, certainly you can do that. I'll work with Mr. Sherman to come up with a notice that can go out and hopefully be back with responses for you at your next meeting.
Meet with what the board wants.
It's my preference.
Wishes of the board.
If I could,
Yes, sir.
what is the Regional Planning Council doing specifically? How are they approaching it?
In terms of their selection process, they are not going through a competitive process. The executive director is talking to individuals and will bring back to the Regional Planning Council a proposal in November. So they're taking, at this point, taking advantage of the exemption from the procurement process.
I'm comfortable with that process, and I think if Ed wants to work with the Regional Planning Council Executive Director too, to go make the suggestion back to us, it's gonna be a recommendation, we'll still making the decision, but I think it's better than just throwing it out.
Further discussion.
Yeah, could I ask, Ed, you were just describing putting it on our website, that was short of a full proposal process, is correct?
Right.
I think I'd ask for quotes for legal services, notice it on our website and receive any proposals based on our anticipated level and budget for legal services as the program.
Okay, yeah, but, and then how would that differ from like a full RFP process?
I'd have to work with Don to make sure we're staying with any sort of state procurement because of such of low amount, there's sort of discretion on that.
I'm comfortable with whatever, but, you know, short advertisement period, could be beneficial.
Can we, maybe a hybrid of where we do put together a, one pager that's shared, that all of the board members would be able to share publicly and with any potential vendors that we know. That would open it up, but that wouldn't put us necessarily through having to convene a panel to review the applications and all of
Right.
that.
I think that's a good idea, sending it out to all the member governments so that you would have it and could distribute it, but also putting it on the webpage. I think that certainly get the word out.
So just I'll end on, I do feel pretty strongly that Mr. Khan's opinion will weigh heavily in it. So, we may end up in the same place, but I think that's okay.
And I was just gonna say, I think that's fine, but I also think that finding a lawyer that wants to do only $10,000 of the work in a year is difficult.
This will be a narrow
Yeah.
audience. Yes.
Yeah, it will be a very narrow audience, and I think, but I do appreciate the idea of putting it on the website. I just agree with Councilmember Floyd that I don't know that we'll get a lot of.
As you know, there's a handful of firms in the Tampa Bay area that do this type of work, and a lot of it. So, I mean, where I don't think we're gonna get hundreds of applications, I think we might get a few. So, all right, I heard a motion to proceed in that direction from Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, further discussion, all in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Show passes unanimously. All right, excellent.
It's two other good news updates. As I mentioned, we're expecting any day now fully execute agreement for that new restore funding coming into the program. We're actually currently advertising for contract support for that initial phase of the project, basically identifying projects and then advancing projects to both design and permitting stage. And then at that point, once we make it through that phase, we'd be open up to actual implementation dollars for projects that we'd forward on to the council. So that is imminent, as I mentioned, that award agreement, and we've already programmed some of that funding into our next fiscal year in anticipation of having that fully executed agreement. Other sort of good news is that through settlement agreement between the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and several environmental groups, we're actually set to receive about $75,000 in additional settlement dollars from that litigation. And that is going to be targeted towards additional monitoring in and around the Piney Point facility during the closure period. That's anticipated to run through next year. We're actually already working with USF to potentially identify a real-time station, establish that within Bishop's Harbor so that we can have an understanding of water quality conditions through that full closure period. So we're hoping, we haven't received any of those funds yet, but we're anticipating it based on the settlement agreement between the parties related to Piney Point. So some good news, some additional funding, some additional monitoring dollars that would be beneficial in understanding overall water quality conditions throughout the bay. Other than that, that's my executive director updates. I asked Carly if she has a couple of staff updates in terms of upcoming events that you might be interested in participating in.
Yeah, the most recent, or the one that's coming up soon, is a Great Bay Scallop Search we're doing with Tampa Bay Watch. We will be sending boaters and kayakers and snorkelers out into the bay to count scallops and see how the population is doing. We are full of spots for snorkelers, but we do still need boaters and a couple of kayakers at Emerson Point. We're expanding this year, so we'll have Fort DeSoto, Grandview Boat Ramp, and Emerson Point all as locations. So if you know anyone, a shallow draft boat that wants to come out and count scallops, we'd love to have you there.
Commissioner, you got to tell your folks if they come down, they got to put them back. They can't keep them.
We also have National Estuaries Week coming up. It's going to be September 21st to 28th. We are going to have quite a few events that week. They are not all finalized, so we'll send that when it's completely finalized, but we will have a give a day in Pasco County. We're going to have a visit to Lettuce Lake Park. We'll have Brews in the Bay with Sarasota Bay Estuary program down in Bradenton, and a seagrass snorkel location to be determined. And the social science subcommittee meeting, we're going to have presentations from several other estuary programs around the country about social science in their estuary programs. So that'll all be happening. And then in October 5th, we're going to have the second annual Tampa Bay Debris Derby. So we will be collecting trash again from the Bay. NOAA was the winner last year, the heavyweight debris derby champion. So if you want to come beat NOAA for this year, we would love to have you guys out there.
The reports.
Does Blake wanna talk about the community survey? Ask them to share?
Yeah, sure. So on Wednesday, we launched what we call the Tampa Bay Community Survey. And this is going to be every 2 years, a survey that we launch for all the residents in the Tampa Bay watershed, basically to sort of ask residents sort of what their priorities are, their opinions and perceptions, experiences living in the Bay, as well as other indicators of their mental health and well-being, to ultimately see how the environment contributes to the well-being of our residents. So we have just released it on Wednesday, and so we can also, hopefully all of you have seen it. If not, we can forward it to you, and if you want to share it with other people within your agency, or if you want to share it in a listserv or things like that. It'll be open until mid-September, then we get responses back.
I took it yesterday. It was good. And we're gonna send it, I'm gonna send it out with my News for Neighborhoods so that we can reach a lot of neighborhoods in the city.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. We'll go to item number 11, Executive Director Review. As is our tradition, we clear the room.
Get out.
You don't want my staff to leave. You take it.
I want them gone. Obviously, it's a public meeting. Anyone's welcome to stay, but started long before I got here.
It's like-
Just how we do it.
That's interesting.
Not a bad way. All right, this shouldn't take a lot of time. And I know there's a lot of new members on the board, so that these surveys are tough when you've been here for just a brief period of time. But did everyone see the summary? Did everyone receive that?
I provided that to you.
Okay.
Do you want me to share it?
If they want, I can just tell you that of a score from 0 to 5, the overall total score was a 4.83 among those that submitted. And so 4s and 5s, a few 3s, but again, an overall of 4.837. I always think back, I traveled with Ed one time to the National EPA meeting in Washington. And other estuary programs from around the country would come up to me and go, man, you guys are the best. And they would talk about Ed, and they would talk about the staff and the work that was going on here locally. And so I always think about that a lot. Sometimes when you're doing stuff in your own backyard and you think, oh, wait, we're doing a decent job, I can tell you we're doing better than a decent job when other people around the country look at us. So something that you can be very proud of your association with this organization. With that, I'll throw it open to discussion questions. And then we'll talk a little bit about salary if there's any general comments or questions, and then we'll talk salary.
I've been delighted with it. I think, having the suggestion of going up the baffle boxes a few years back, he went after it. You guys were awesome. Found the way to get the money through to help with the Bay. and I'm glad to see that, as we had a conversation a couple of years ago as well about expanding the parameters of it, instead of just having to join with Regional Planning Council, was okay, but I think it started a good conversation. Actually, we should be looking at everything around, because all that water is gonna eventually get to the bay to some way or another, so I'm very delighted with what his leadership's been. And I think it was last year, or the year before, he actually didn't want to take a pay raise so he could pay his employees more. So he's got a passion for what he's doing, and I couldn't have more confidence in the job.
I tend to agree. I mean, I've been working with Mr. Sherwood for probably 2.5 years now, and I've just really enjoyed his by and large, his prep meetings are the best I do, and I do a lot, I mean, with the city, obviously, but his are very in-depth. I love the staff's, they do a really good job of linking things and explaining things, and so I feel like by the time we get here, there isn't really much discussion to be had, because the discussion has been had, at least for me. And I really enjoy that, and I also, I told Ed this on our prep call, that really you can tell a lot by people's body language, and I feel like the staff really does like him. And they seem to work well together. There doesn't seem to be a feel of stress and anxiety, and like you said, making sure his staff is getting adequate increases, but I'm really impressed with his ability to he and his staff are staying on top of new grants. Obviously, seems to be we're getting more money every year, so they're doing a very good job of reaching out, tackling the federal grants too, which is difficult, and now working more on the state ones, I think is excellent. So I think he's doing a wonderful job, and I don't know if we're just like saying we want to keep him. Or
I hadn't heard a motion otherwise.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know what we're.
Sounds like took a turn.
No. I'm not quite sure, other than saying, he's doing a great job. And then I would also personally say that I believe that he deserves the same raise as his staff,
Anybody else?
if not more. I don't think he'll take more, and that's the reason I say that.
Well, Maya, maybe you can help me remember. We've gone over the years where he wouldn't take it. The next year we forced him to take it. Then the next year, and I will tell you that in our meeting, he again asked for he's budgeted the 3% in for his staff, and then the 5% up to 5% for the merit. And he asked for no raise this year so that the funding would be available to take care of his staff. And so that's up to us, I guess, whether we accept his recommendation or we, force him to take the 3% minimum.
And I'll just offer that I think one of Ed's considerations is, in order to stay on top of all of the new grants that we've received, we have grown the program to the largest staff that the program's ever had. And so what that does is creates a budgeting concern, because we pretty much, have a fairly fixed amount that we're getting from the federal government. So when you just kind of add up what maintaining 8.5 FTEs looks like over time, he's trying to be fiscally responsible in terms of making sure that folks aren't at risk there. We also have done work this year looking at all of the positions that we have for our staff folks. It's doing that. And making sure that there is pay equity amongst all of the positions that's commensurate with the level of responsibility and work that they're providing. And then we're also making sure that, the director's salary doesn't stay out of step with the remaining staff salaries. And we think that the distinction that's there right now at his current level, which is around $120,000 a year, that still represents about $30,000 more than the next highest staff folks. So we think there's an appropriate amount that's reflecting the additional responsibility that he has as the director, but it provides for good pay equity and for a relatively horizontal and flat organization. So we've talked about these things, and I think that's sort of the things that he's balancing in his recommendation.
Okay. Further discussion?
I'll say good things. I haven't been here that long, but I've felt brought up to speed very quickly, and I think that's because it takes time to sit down and meet with us ahead of time, and it's made me feel quite comfortable in everything we're doing, even though it's my first year. So yeah, I can only say positive things in that respect. I don't really know that I have an opinion on the pay right now of Ed's recommendation. I tend to sway towards, but it sounds like he always recommends that. So
He has, and again, I just don't remember which, I thought we did the raise last year.
He did accept a raise last year.
And so my thought this year was to accept his recommendation and then maybe next year force it, do these turns that we're doing. But that was just kind of how we've gone over the years, and that shows you the character of how much he does care about the program and how much he cares about his staff.
And so I would agree with that, only with the stipulation that next year we ask you to put it in the budget for him to receive the same raise as the staff.
We bake it in early.
Yeah, that would just be what I would like to see, because if you will only take it every other year, then I think we should just go ahead and bake that in. So whether it be if merit raise then only can be 4% instead of 5%, like however we do it, but I do think it's fair, and I do appreciate his focusing on his staff, but he also has bills.
Absolutely,
So.
absolutely. And when you were looking at the salary structure, have we gone out and compared to the other NEPs and other similar organizations in recent years?
So we've compared to the other NEPs, and we've also done some regional benchmarking with comparator positions. And I think over time, that's some of the pay equity that we've been working towards building in to get a couple of the positions where we think that they need to be. We're not the highest of all of the NEP folks that are out there, but we're not the lowest either. And each NEP is different. Some of them are nonprofits, some of them are housed within the equivalent of the state DEP, some of them are in universities, and then some of them are independent like us. And so as you'd expect with those kinds of different organizational, institutional settings, there are different pay levels that are kind of commensurate with that too. So we've looked at it. We think we're in the neighborhood, trying to get to at least the 50, like the
Sure.
median.
And it may be a more point of decision should he ever depart. When we go back out, then we'll probably have to commit some more money for that point at that point.
For executive directors, I think he's on the lower end.
Right. That's my point, that at some point we'll pay for
Yeah.
this.
He's on the lower end, and he takes leadership positions like you've described, within the Association of National Estuary Programs. He's now serving on the executive committee as the treasurer, and I think that he coaches a lot of the new directors that are coming up. So, I think he's serving not only as a leader for our staff, but for the NEP program broadly.
Excuse me, this is Commissioner Miller.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to throw out maybe another alternative coming from a small nonprofit, probably the last 14 years, and I appreciate him wanting to make sure his team is taken care of, but maybe an alternate offer is to do a one-time bonus. It's just, in other words, that's a pretty high rating in a review, and to not acknowledge it financially, especially if he's on the low end of the pay. If it's in the budget, and forgive me for not knowing, of course, I'm still getting up to speed on things. If it can be afforded this year, perhaps a bonus in the amount of the 5% versus an increase in the base pay. Just wanted to put that out there as an alternative option.
All right, thank you. Thoughts? Maya, what kind of budget flexibility do we have on this?
Well, we haven't met with staff, like as Ed mentioned, those performance appraisals for individual staff will happen between now and the end of the fiscal year. And so that money's still gonna come from somewhere. It's gonna probably come from that same pot. So it'll just affect whatever the percentages are available for certain staff. So there's absolutely flexibility. It's your discretion to make an offer out there. I think if you have a recommendation, I do think he'll respect it.
I think at the very least, I would I would like him to have the 3% raise that everyone else is getting. I feel like that is just simply now knowing that he's on the low end.
You avoid compression anyway.
Yeah, and then just also trying to figure out next year how we can make sure that he receives a raise too, because based on these scores, it sounds like he would have a merit raise of 5%.
And I think early on, and my memory, might have been before even you were here, was that we did a one-time adjustment to boost it up significant to get it in the, and
It was for Holly.
it was when Holly left and he came on, or was it before Holly left?
I think it was before Holly left.
When did you come on?
I started with as program staff in 2016.
Okay, all right. My brain doesn't.
I know, it's.
I think, I mean, the one time is an interesting idea. I think the 3% is, obviously goes into his FRS as opposed to the bonus.
Taxed differently as well.
It's taxed differently.
Bonuses.
I prefer the 3% just to, I think it's standard operating even,
I'll offer that I think this is an important conversation as we enter another strategic planning cycle, because essentially what we have to do is we're balancing the amount of the federal appropriation that we're using to fund salaries and operating, with also trying to make sure that the money is, getting out the door for projects. And so, we all know that the cost of doing business has changed on the salary side as well as project side. So many times we're in positions where we're offering awkward sums of money for projects, and we're having these conversations where we haven't necessarily provided the flexibility in our cash flow for salaries that you're maybe looking for. And so if you all can continue to think about these things and provide some guidance of what you want the estuary program to look like going forward. Is it more important that we have a staff of 8.5 that's compensated at a level that you are comfortable with, that's providing services? Is it important to you that we're still providing seed money for projects, like for things like baffle boxes? Kind of getting our finger on the pulse of what your preference is and what would really support your work as our partners would be really helpful for us, because this is the position we're in now, as we're trying to do all the things with $800,000.
Just unless my math is right, if we're at 120, 3% is $3,600. So.
I just don't.
I was thinking the same thing with the 3%, so I'm glad you brought it up. I think you make the recommendation, with his recommendation, with him get 3%.
All right.
That and
This will be the one time that we disregard his
That's
recommendation.
right.
Yeah, and I think that there is wiggle room, but as you said, you're always going to do that. And staff that cares about an issue like this is always, they're always going to say, no, well, we would rather have that baffle box project, but that's not the point. And that's why those of us here have to say, no, you deserve the money because you are making the work happen. And I agree with you about compensating people fairly and bringing it up to more median salary ranges and more equitable, but that also goes for him. So I think that once we can get the staff to where everyone is more comfortable, then we talk about his increase, because while he is, I'm sure, very committed to this organization, at some point when you see some salaries elsewhere, you think, well, maybe I'll give it a try. And I want to do what's possible to make sure that he feels comfortable staying and feels valued.
Yeah, I think he's not going anywhere, but I don't think
No,
that's the
but-
reason that we
Yeah.
treat him differently than what we would. you know.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
On the consortium money, usually there's administrative money in there. It's like 2 or 3%, isn't there?
So for the Tampa Bay Nitrogen Management Consortium, or for the?
No, for the Part 2 money for the restruct.
Well, that's another choice that we've been making for grants, for when we've been seeking these large grants, like for the bipartisan infrastructure law, for the restore stormwater Regional Stormwater Controls Project, we are not budgeting in a management fee or salary time. We're trying to put all of those resources towards projects because we know that the projects costs have escalated to such a point where even at the levels that we're receiving grants, it's still sometimes not competitive out there in the private market. And I do think Ed and I've had conversations about the position that is putting us in. So we still collect a management fee on the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund donations that come in, unless someone stipulates with their donation, you know, that they don't want it to cover sort of the administrative costs of doing business. We have, I think, recognized because of the size of our staff now that for some of these additional grants that we're putting in, we're trying to go back to that place of covering some of the salary to free up room like that. For example, the NSF grant that I'm a co-PI on has salary and travel and things like that. So it's offsetting some of those things. So we're trying to find a balance, but for the biggest grants that we're receiving right now, we're not taking money for salaries.
So I think we need to change that.
Yeah. I
Because
completely agree.
when we, with Regional Planning Council, we got into a pickle with, we're putting so much money out and we're waiting for the money to come in. All of a sudden, we're getting in a hole where the money's flowing. It's designed there so that you can have the people doing the work.
Yeah.
So if we're really squeezing this tight to actually have the lowest executive director and he's trying to help us thing, we got to change our way we're doing it. So no, I'm not the lowest, but anyway, I think you need to change direction. Let's go and take that administrative money to give you at least a cushion in your budget so that you can keep good people all through.
Okay.
Heard.
Point well taken. Any further discussion on this?
One thing, Maya, if we go through and propose a 3% for Ed, how is that going to affect salaries for staff? Because that's a big deal for him. And so you said you haven't had the conversations yet, the evaluations.
So we've done, I guess we have a choice on how we tackle that, but I think historically what we've done is we have got projections and what we think we're proposing as increases for each staff person. And so one of the options that we'll take a look at is whether or not we reduce some of the percentages that we're proposing for staff to make sure that we stay overall in line with the overall budget for salaries there. So it's sort of a fixed pot, and if Ed gets 3%, then the remaining will get allocated between staff.
It will most likely come out of the merit section, not out of 3%.
Yeah.
Their COLA, right?
Not everyone's even gonna get 3% is the reality, because we're trying to this pay equity. So for others who are higher on the pay ladder, like Marcus and myself, that 3% represents, because it's off of a bigger salary to begin with. You know, so typically we're just shy of that 3%, and he's not dissatisfied with our performance, but it's just sort of about making the budget works. And I don't know I don't know how much he wants me to get in this level of detail of what we do. But it sort of, he's working with that one pot and kind of adjusting it as needed.
When we talked, well, there was a 3% for the insurance. There's up to 5%, 0 to 5.
Correct.
So there's a 0 to 5. Most government entities don't have that kind of merit scale like that. It's everyone gets, you know. We're talking about $3,600 out of a $1.056 million pot. I think Ed can make it work. You know, the only other alternative, I don't necessarily want to throw another idea out there, would be that he gets whatever the minimum raise that any employee gets, he gets. We could do something like that. If he does a 2.9 for everybody, or he would get a 2.9. I mean, I'm just making up stuff now.
I'm comfortable with the 3 because quite frankly, we're behind. And I 100% agree that we need to put the administrative costs back in. That is simply the cost of doing business. Grants expect overhead. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and I'm shocked at how little in local government and state government, the overhead is. I work with USAID and routinely 10% at least. That's a low. So I'm always shocked when I see 2 or 3%.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
You take $8 million and take 3% of that, it's a pretty hefty number. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to take care of everybody, do the organization the right way, and as quicker you spend that 8 million, opens you up for more things anyway.
Yeah.
Because now you've shown you can do the work. So I think it's an easy fix. So to give them the 3%, I'll make a motion, we give them the 3% bonus, and we make sure we take care of staff. Second.
We have a motion second for the discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, is there further discussion on Mr. Sherwood? All right, someone want to retrieve the, hold on, Don.
Talking about the administration part, doing that change, do we just bring that up now as well?
I'll mention that when.
Okay.
A little longer than we expected. All right, to recap our discussion, or you can go back and listen to the tape later. The entire board wants to thank you for your service for another year and appreciate the good work. On a scale of 5, you scored a 4.84, which is better than any Uber driver I've ever had. So, no, seriously, everyone was very complimentary. You can see by 4.8 is really, really good in all the different categories. We appreciate your leadership, your technical background, your ability to recruit a great staff, running the organization, securing the grants, as well as being a national leader in the estuary programs across the country. So this is probably the only time all year that we will dismiss your recommendation, and we have approved a 3% raise for you. And there was a second conversation about funding and issues I'll get to in a second. But again, I just want to thank you. As I've been chair for a few years, and absolutely pleasure to work with you since you've taken the helm of the organization, and can't say enough good things about the work that you and your team do. Any other board members want to add anything? There's a love fest in here, so
Yeah, I'll just say again what I said to Mr. Sherwood in our meeting, that you have wonderful communication style. I've really appreciated it. The in-depth reports, so that by the time we get here, we don't have a lot of conversation, which sounds bad probably to the public, but is really good. It allows me to get questions answered, but then still have conversation when necessary. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate how much you care for your staff. I appreciate all of the background information we get every time, and how clearly and carefully you obviously focus on every penny. But that deserves to be rewarded as well, so.
Commissioner.
We could save a half hour a year of every meeting if you just take the raise like you should take.
There was couldn't agree more. During the discussion, we were talking about different funding streams, and Commissioner Mariano identified a source. But we were talking about administrative fees on the grants that we receive, and that I know in the past we haven't always accepted those. What word I'm blanking on, but and so that is an opportunity that maybe we should reconsider going forward to help with the funding stream for our staff and for administration of the program, the grants. Commissioner pointed out that every organization that gives a grant expects a certain level of administration fees, and so we should not necessarily just turn that away without the consideration of how that impacts everything else. So, yes, sir.
To help with that, what happens is you get X number of dollars. As Maya was saying, they want to put all the money into the projects. But if you don't have the people to run the projects, it slows everything down. I'd rather have you take that, if it's 2%, 3%, whatever the number is, and take all that money in administration, so you can pay them as well as you and keep it moving quicker. And the more you move it, that administration can help fund your organization, so you're not strained to take care of your people as well as yourself. So I would like to see it make that change in policy, and don't worry about the short funding of the projects, because what's gonna happen, once you get those projects done, you can come back for more. So and that just means for more credibility. And again, the main thing is to get stuff done quicker anyway, so it lets you run the organization, fund the organization, and do the great work you're doing at a higher level.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, heard and definitely appreciate all the sentiments and compliments. It humbles me and flatters me as an executive director to hear that and to know that I'm performing up to expectations. So that's very important to me as a public servant. If I'm falling short, I want to hear that. And if there's a new direction that I need to go and project onto my staff, I all want to hear that, of course, from the policy board and our management board members. So very much appreciate the continued vote of confidence in my leadership. And again, as I've said in the past, as a broken record, my accomplishments are a reflection of my staff. And very grateful for the strong team we have now. And we're looking to do a lot more great things in the near future. So thank you.
And when we're having this discussion, I thought, we have so many board members that are relatively new that maybe for the February, maybe we could do a little budget 101, kind of back to basics of where all the money comes from, where it goes. I think that would be a great refresher for everybody, including myself. All right, very good. Moving on, item number 12, project highlight, Carly Jones.
This is actually in combination with our interim update of our CCMP. We thought it wise to go through and actually update our communications plan to kind of give you some highlights of where we're headed in terms of our engagement and outreach to the community over the next 5 years. So Carly's going to give a little bit of update on some of the ongoing projects and some of the new things we're thinking about over this 2024 to 2028 period.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to give an update on our communication and outreach plan for 2024 to 2028. This is just for information. There's no action requested at this time. The prior communications plan was in effect from 2017 to 2023. And there were many of the goals that were put forth in that plan were achieved by the team. In 2017, a new logo was introduced and a complete rebrand of the estuary program to make sure that everything aligned with that logo, the branding, the styling was undergone to make sure it all matched. We started to look at participatory science events, which started with a tea bag index event. This uses varied tea bags as a proxy to study decomposition in different environments and allowed citizens to be directly involved in the research we're doing. It also led to a publication in the peer-reviewed literature. In 2019, we joined both Instagram and LinkedIn. As we all know, social media changes constantly. Instagram at that time was the best one for engagement, and we'll see a little bit later. It is still what we're getting the most engagement on at this time. And LinkedIn has been helpful for procurement, RFPs, and a more professional audience. We underwent a website refresh in 2020 to modernize and make the website a little bit more user-friendly, and produced 2 State of the Bay reports in 2019 and 2022, as well as creating a web-based version of the State of the Bay to go in addition to that print version that was previously being produced. We underwent the private lateral sewer line behavior change campaign, or PIPE Up, which we will be continuing in this communication plan. You'll see that a little bit later. We'll talk about that. And we increased both Tarpon Tag and Bay Mini Grant advertising to try to reach some different audiences that we had not been previously reaching. In our communications planning, we identified 4 major priorities: science literacy, outreach and engagement, support training and capacity building, and behavior change. We're not planning to move in a significantly different direction than the previous comms plan. We just wanted to align our efforts and direct where we spend our time and resources into meaningful communications. One of the main things that we're going to be doing is the Give a Day for the Bay events that you all know we've had for a long time. We do recognize that many other organizations in the watershed have trash cleanup events or planting events. And in an effort to not duplicate partner efforts, we wanted to kind of find our niche and how we could be different from those. So we'll be continuing to emphasize participatory science to allow people to actually get involved in the research we're doing. Additionally, this will allow us to publish our findings in the peer-reviewed literature, which is one of our goals. We will continue to have our trash-free cleanup events. We'll use the escaped trash assessment protocol to collect data from those and further the research in that area. We'll also continue our State of the Bay reporting. The next State of the Bay report will be coming out next spring. We would like to create a little bit more brief of a document that kind of gives a very high-level state of the Bay that can be accessible by many different audiences, not just very scientific audiences. Hopefully with this overview, we'll have it streamlined that it could be produced on an annual basis. And we'd like to update the web version to integrate it a little bit more seamlessly with the print version. We'll continue to prioritize our high-performing social media, which, like I said, is still Instagram at this time. We're seeing a lot of engagement on short reels and videos. We recently came out with a new paper it's labeled Hot and Fresh. It's about temperature and salinity in Tampa Bay. And we released this short reel, which you can see really quickly. As you can see, funny, silly, it's very short, but it got a lot of engagement. We got a lot of media interest from that, and we were able to spread that message a little bit farther than if it had just been a picture of the paper and, very scientific information. We'd also like to include more interactive posts, such as story quizzes on Instagram and Facebook, or challenges to post a picture or answer a question. We will continue our core behavior change campaigns. We are going to, during this time, be evaluating our Be Floridian messaging that we're using currently to see what's working, what's not working, if we need to change anything. We'll also be launching some new messages for that Pipe Up campaign to see what's working best with the audience that we currently have in the Bay. We'll also have rotational campaigns such as the Scoop the Poop one. We're going to be refreshing that a little bit to bring it more to the forefront and put some more information out there. And then we're going to include flexibility to address any new issues as they may arise. One of the new things we'd like to include is an ambassador program where we would work directly with community leaders in some of our priority audiences to teach them our messages to bring back to their community. As a staff of 9, we obviously can't be everywhere at once, and this will increase our capacity to spread our messages back to those communities. It will also allow those communities to bring any issues or concerns back to us so that we can have a really good measure of what the communities are looking for, what may be important to them. It will also allow us to reduce barriers that we've identified for those community-driven projects like the Bay Mini Grants. We've identified a key audience of elected officials and that we want to prioritize during this time. We'll continue our capital visits to DC and schedule some of those visits to Tallahassee. We'll work with you guys to identify any current legislative priorities and provide support for unified messaging for any key topics that may come up. We'll continue to support the Association of National Estuary Programs collaborative campaigns like I Heart Estuaries and Estuaries Week, which are both social media campaigns that estuary programs do every year. We will be up for a reauthorization during this time. We're currently authorized till 2026. At this time, we are authorized for $1 million per program, and the appropriations are set at $850,000 per program. So we'd like to encourage some of our communications with those elected officials to stress the importance of supporting this reauthorization. We'd also like to include some experience-based tours so some of our elected officials can get a more hands-on experience with the watershed. That was a very brief overview. There's obviously a lot more in the actual plan, so feel free to read it on your own time. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to understand the point of the pizza box.
So because the paper was called Hot and Fresh, we thought that's a very common slogan for a lot of pizza. And it was just a creative way to announce it, that you're opening it and the paper's in there hot and fresh.
Listen, I'm on budget, you focus on laterals. Recently, we took over a old F2A plant along the coast, and it was, didn't know how many pipes were actually leaking, but there were a lot. And Commissioner Starkey, who actually lives up in Bell Park, was noticed over the past year how much cleaner the water looks. So those laterals are important thing to highlight. Push.
Any other questions? I think some of the audiences that we should continue our efforts are the ones that are the non-traditional environmental, the recreational fishing, the boating, all of those that rely and depend on it being a clean estuary. Tired of seeing Indian River Lagoon license plates on all those boats or on the cars at the boat ramp. So it's an audience that, they want what we want. So anybody else? Thank you very much. All right, and we have Nancy Norton.
Yeah, Nancy Norton from the Water Management District Swim Section is going to give an overview of the Boyd Hill Nature Preserve Freshwater Wetland Habitat Restoration Project.
Awesome.
Morning. My name is Nancy Norton. I work for the Swift-Mud Swim program, this surface water improvement and management program at the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I'm senior professional engineer there, and I've worked in the program for about 17 years now. Really happy to talk to y'all this morning about the Boyd Hill Nature Preserve project. But first, mention of our sponsorship, so to speak, a message from our sponsor. The Southwest Florida Water Management District is one of 5 water management districts. It was created in 1961 as a result of concerns spurred by Hurricane Donna. The Water Resources Act defined 4 missions: water supply, flood protection, water quality, and natural systems. Then in 1987, the SWIM Act was created by the Florida legislature to protect, restore, and maintain Florida's highly threatened surface water bodies. Under this act, the water management districts were directed to identify a list of priority water bodies within their authority and implement plans to improve them and protect them. The program works with partners including federal and state agencies, local governments, and other organizations as we do with the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. The Swift-Mud Swim program identified 12 priority water bodies, 3 coastal estuaries, 5 first magnitude springs, and 4 lake systems as shown on this district map. Our SWIM program is administered through the Natural Systems and Restoration Bureau, which is responsible for most of our water quality and natural system projects. This slide is an overview of the accomplishments of the SWIM program between 1989 and 2023. That's about 34 years of working with partners such as the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. Now we'll talk a lot about the Boyd Hill project. I'm going to call it the Boyd Hill project, even though you see it's a mouthful at the top of this slide as the actual project name. It's a cooperative funding initiative between the City of St. Pete, the district, with grant funding through the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. The project's located in Pinellas County in the city of St. Petersburg, along the southwestern shore of Lake Maggiore. Drainage from the preserve and upstream watershed flows through the preserve to Lake Magori, which ultimately discharges to Tampa Bay. The green shading in the lower part of this map represents the Boyd Hill Nature Preserve, and the red star is the preserve entrance. How many of you have visited the Boyd Hill Nature Preserve? And so you're familiar with that project site. The Boyd Hill Nature Preserve project was submitted by City of St. Pete to create, restore, and enhance approximately 30 acres of freshwater and upland habitat in the Boyd Hill Nature Preserve. The city and district executed a funding agreement in October 2019 with the city providing the land and long-term maintenance and the district being the lead for design, permitting, and construction. The total project cost for design and permitting is $1,096,800 split 50-50 between the district and the city of St. Petersburg. Funding includes a $200,000 Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund or TBRF grant, and the construction budget is $896,800. The Boyd Hill Nature Preserve project is shown on this slide. It's approximately, the preserve is approximately 245,000 acres with 5 miles of trails. I've sketched the approximate locations of the 4 work areas in red. So if you look real carefully, you can see the red. You should be able to see the red. Yes. There's a area 1, 2, 3, and 4. Area 1 and 2 and 3 include recontouring drainage channels to provide more natural stream channels, which will slow stream velocities and provide stormwater treatment before discharge to Lake Magori. Area 2 involves enhancing wetland areas by clearing exotic plants and linking upland runoff to downstream wetlands, directing runoff under trails to culverts and stormwater conveyances, as does Area 4, which included regrading an existing swale and hydroblasting an existing spoil berm to allow flow into a cutoff wetland to rehydrate that wetland. Design and permitting was completed in 2022 and bids were received in 2023. Mobilization and construction began shortly after issuing our notice to proceed to the contractor in March of 2024. And the construction timeline is approximately 18 months with a follow-up 1 year of plant establishment and maintenance period to be completed by the fall of 2026. March 2024, the contractor actually began construction work in Area 4. He chose Area 4. I mean, you might have thought, why wouldn't he go 1, 2, 3, 4? But he actually chose Area 4 because it was the wettest and he would be able to benefit from it being the dry season. So that would aid in getting the project done in a successful and quick manner. The Area 4 was completed 12.26 acres of wetland benefit at the end of May, and the contractor began Area 2 work along Lake Magori. That represents 10.5 acres of wetland benefits through removal of exotic vegetation and rehydration of the wetlands. Currently, the contractor is completing Area 2, which will be the final part of that will be planting Area 2 with native vegetation. And then moving to Area 1, which has 5.5 acres of wetland benefits For area 3, he's not started that. He's focused now in finishing up area 2 and working in area 1. So this is another slide of where those 4 areas are, area 1, 2, 3, and 4, represented by the little white boxes in this slide. And I've got a bunch of pictures to show you that demonstrate what the contractor has done so far. And you'll see this inset map in the upper left of each one of those photos, so you can get a feel for what we're talking about and where that is. So area 4, as I said, was the first area that he began in, and this is a picture of the swale that was contoured and revegetated. This is a couple weeks later, when the area was starting to be watered a lot. We got a little rain, and boom, our plants began to flourish a little better. And here is a few weeks later when they're actually starting to bloom. And one of the great things about the plants in the swale itself is that it provides 2 functions. First, it's those roots are going to hold the soils as they become established, and that prevents runoff to the lake. And the second is that those plants also uptake any nutrients that are present in the rainwater or the stormwater runoff. I just like flowers. So here's another bloom that's in the swale now. And you might wonder, well, we just had Tropical Storm Debbie. What happened with that swale? Here's what happened. This is Monday after Tropical Storm Debbie blew through on Sunday, Monday the 5th. And you can see the swale actually rose up, it's carrying water. All the plants still look happy. So I don't think we lost anybody to high velocities blowing them out. They'd had enough time to establish. And here, there's a faint red arrow. Do you see what I'm pointing to? An alligator swimming right after Tropical Storm Debbie. And that swale, the trails that go across that swale had to be carry the flow of the new swale. So this is a picture of one of the pipes that went in to do that. This is the hydroblasting area before Tropical Storm Debbie. And here it is doing it what we wanted it to do, and that is breaching that berm that used to be there and carrying those flows over and to rehydrate that wetland that was beyond there and ultimately drains to Lake Maggiore. And this is the end of the project in area 4. So moving to area 2, that was his second. The first thing he had to do was get the water from the upland areas down into the lower area where the wetlands could have used some more. We could not only rehydrate those wetlands, but also extend or enhance that wetland area. And this is after the ditch on the side of the trail was cleared, same area, the ditch rather was cleared. And here's what it looks like. I think it kind of looks like this right now because it's not planted yet, but that area that you see with the soils exposed are being prepped for planting. And after Tropical Storm Debbie, you can see just how much hydration that'll stay on the property instead of washing directly to Lake Maggiore. This is a picture of the vegetation being removed and what it looked like as the project moved down towards the lake shore. And after Tropical Storm Debbie, what it looked like. That orange fence in the front was one of the ways that the contractor in the park managed the visitors to the park, redirecting them off those trails that were being used for construction. And even though the properties were bare, you can see in this, after Tropical Storm Debbie, we held the soils on site. Now moving to area 1, this is a downstream culvert, and if you look towards the right top of the slide, you can see the greenway there is the existing ditch that our project calls for recontouring and creating some stream usage that doesn't look like a drainage ditch anymore. This is another photo of an alligator. That culvert, right as we started the project, was home to a mother and her family, a mother alligator and her family. And as the contractor moved in this area, those baby gators have gotten a little larger, so not as much of a hazard to the crew or to the upsetting the gators. And this is downstream of that culvert as our contractor is cleared. At this point, the channel becomes wider and spreads out, rehydrating the wetlands around that area. And our project is to do more of that sloping, gentle slope, providing that rain, more of a cross-country kind of a flow instead of a directed flow. This is after Tropical Storm Debbie, same area. You can see some birds in this one. Here's what the drainage ditch on area 1 looks like. It's very similar to what area 3 looks like. Like I said, we're going to redirect it. This ditch is about 8 feet deep, 20 feet wide. What we're proposing to do, what our contractor is going to work on, is putting some of the piping some of it to redirect it to a different channel that's going to be only about 5 feet deep and 50 feet wide. So that really does provide a stream area that is going to be more of a natural systems restoration function than it is now. This is as the project's soils are being stockpiled to fill the old ditch. Put the pipes in. These are 48-inch pipes. Oh, I should have said those 48-inch pipes are having another benefit at that point, and that benefit will be to develop some land bridges for the gopher tortoise populations. This is a map of the green dots on this one represent gopher tortoise burrows that are active at the nature preserve, and the little blue dots you see on this are inactive ones. So by linking with areas 3 and 1, linking with land bridges, that provides a bridge, as I said, for the gopher tortoises. And for those of you that get excited about big equipment, our contractor has moved in some larger equipment to do the work on the 2 stream channels that are being developed. So in summary, the 30-acre Boyd Hill Nature Preserve project improvements include water quality improvements, natural system restoration, which increases the wetland functionality. The rainfall runoff is captured in the project improvement areas and that ultimately discharges to Tampa Bay versus Lake Maggiore. So with that, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, Nancy, for highlighting this project. This is one of the projects that we need to focus on comprehensively throughout the watershed to address some of the stormwater nutrient loading. And these nature-based solutions, floodplain rehydration are things that we need to target in the future and create more widespread projects throughout the watershed. So thank you for the highlights.
Absolutely. And glad that T-Burf could be a partner with the city and SwiftMud to make it happen. We appreciate you being here this morning.
Thanks.
Maya, information items, anything to cover?
Nothing specific to call out, but as always, if you want to dive into our Smart Sheet project management system, I'd be happy to help you navigate all of the different projects that we're juggling as a small staff. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 15th here in this room.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to do it at the beginning, but we got online. Ms. Watkins, are you still on the line?
Right here.
We want to welcome you to the board. If you wanted to have a chance to introduce yourself, we appreciate you being the representative now.
Oh, thank you. Nancy Watkins, I'm a CPA. That's what I do in real life. I am currently a member of the Hillsborough Community College Board, serving as chair. I've been on that board almost continuously since 1999. And I was appointed to the Southwest Florida Water Management District Board in 2023, which has been the impetus for the appointment here. I have a real passion for service governance and service. In addition to being CPA, by the way, I'm a professional registered parliamentarian. I always joke that I thought people would think I was boring because I was a CPA, so I became a parliamentarian. So, little joke. But I look forward to working with all of you. I'm a strong conservationist, really passionate about our water resources and all of our resources in Florida. I'm a native-born Floridian, one of those what used to be quite the unicorn, probably it's becoming even more so. I have been in Tampa. I have lived and worked in the 33606 zip code since 1971. So I have very much a water-bound world down here in the South Tampa Peninsula. But thank you for all that you all do, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Miller, I want to welcome you to the board as well, if you want to bring
you.
remarks.
Yeah, thank you for having me. For those of you that may not know, I was appointed by the governor back in June to fill the vacancy made by Commissioner Owen when he left to run for State House 70. So I picked up all of his boards and service, and so I was excited to have this one. I do have a undergraduate degree in economics, but I specialize in scarce natural resources. It's always been a passion for me, and I've raised a bunch of nature kids too. So preserving our wildlife in all fashions is very important to me. So I'm pleased to be here and look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much. Is Councilman Cotton on the line? Ryan, do you want to say good morning?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Sorry I can't make the meeting. I look forward to being at the November 15th meeting, but enjoy what's going on so far and look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much. We welcome all the new board members. This is I think one of the worst kept secrets of regional cooperation of all our different cities and counties. Democrats, Republicans working together on a common goal here. So we're excited to have you and look forward to seeing you in person when you can be here. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.